Hello, hello. How's it going out there? It is Mondays with Mark time, and I am here with you, and maybe we'll see a couple other folks here soon. Tonight we are looking at the story of Bartimeaus, the blind beggar from Mark 10, the end of Mark 10, kind of this bookend of this way section that began with the healing of the blind man that took a couple tries a little while ago, and then moving on through all of this teaching that Jesus has been doing, and also mainly talking about predicting his death and how he must suffer, and trying to clarify what makes a good disciple and what makes a good leader and what makes a good people overall. So that's where we've been so far, and we're going to look at the rest of Mark 10 here in just a second. I will pull up the text. Welcome everyone who is watching along throughout the time. If you have any questions or comments, snide remarks, you can make them in the chat here, and I should see them and be able to respond or give you a thumbs down, up, whatever is the appropriate response. So yeah, go ahead and do that. And we are expecting, oh, I see Mark jumped in right there. We're expecting Mark in, and I will tell you what, I'm gonna read the text and I'll bring Mark in and we'll talk about it. It's a pretty short little text here. Let's see. Let me share the screen with everyone. All right. Mark 10. Everybody see that? All right. So they came to Jericho. As he and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho, Bartimeaus, son of Timaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout out and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried out even more loudly, "Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." So, throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man said to him, "My teacher, let me see again." Jesus said to him, "Go, your faith has made you well." Immediately he regained his sight and followed him on the way. All right. Good. Okay. Yeah, so that is our text. There's Mark. Mark, how you doing?
How you doing today?
I'm doing all right.
Good. You had a good weekend?
It was all right, I can't complain.
Yeah. You should get some of that cool cool northeast breezes up there now.
Yeah, we're getting to the point where we're getting near the end of the nice weather.
Yeah.
So
we'll see what happens down after that.
Yeah, it's going to get. Someone was saying today that I needed to get out and about for the next few days because it's about the last of the 7-degree weather we'll.
Yeah, probably so. Unfortunately,
we'll have around here. So yeah, we'll see. Marcy called to let me know that her she had a colleague that needed her help driving her somewhere. So we hope that she will be able to make it in, but we'll understand if if duty calls.
Duty calls sometimes. Charles Light.
Let's see here.
Right.
All righty. Yeah, good. All right. So, no, you sent me some.
Yeah, I mean, that could be just added discussion to.
Yeah. So what? Here's the kind of thing that I want to throw in as some background, because I was, Marcy and I both were saying how we had done some papers on this for New Testament. We both had to do, well, we didn't have to do this story. I think there was always a couple choices, what you could do.
Yeah.
But we both chose this story, and I lost all my papers, all my computer-based stuff going at the end of seminary. But I was trying to remember what I did. And I remember a book that I referenced when I was doing that, and it's a real academic kind of book, but basically it traces from early in Mark on through here the way that Mark is picking up on Isaiah, on themes from Isaiah, the prophet.
Okay.
And what he says particularly about this section here is that early on, there's an Isaiah quote about a way being prepared in the wilderness, all the way back to John in Mark's gospel. And that's a direct quote from Isaiah. And then he talks about how this section of Isaiah, this section of Mark that starts with the first blind man healing, that the guy, the figures turn into trees, and then through to this healing, is similar to the parts of Isaiah where Isaiah is saying that because of the people's idolatry, they have become deaf and blind. They can't hear what Yahweh is doing in their midst. And in the latter part of Isaiah, it's always, I'm doing this new thing. I'm going to do this new thing, but you don't, you can't catch on to it. And he particularly talks about a couple of texts which I think are good. I'm gonna try to grab them because I had them up here.
Is he talking about early Isaiah?
He's talking about early Isaiah, and then he talks about how that leads over into Isaiah 40 through 55.
Okay.
But this is right after. This is in chapter 6, right after the kind of call scene for Isaiah. Okay. And then he says, when he sends Isaiah out, he says, go to say to the people, keep listening, but do not comprehend. Keep looking, but do not understand. Make the mind of this people dull and stop their ears and shut their eyes. Then, there's this kind of threat will be punishment, emptiness, because they don't understand what's happening. And then I'll show this. The other one is it's funny because the other one is the Old Testament text that I read that we had on Sunday, even though I wasn't following lectionary. So I thought it was interesting that this came up. It says, this is for Isaiah 29, because these people draw near with their mouths and honor me with their lips, while their hearts are far from me, and their worship of me is a human commandment learned by rote. So I again would do amazing things for people, shocking and amazing. The wisdom of their wise shall perish, the discernment of the discerning shall be hidden. And that's my favorite part. Ha! You will hide a plan too deep. You who hide a plan too deep for the Lord, whose deeds are in the dark, and who say, who sees us, who knows us? You turn things upside down. Shall the potter be regarded as the clay? Shall the thing made say to its maker, you did not make me? Or the thing formed say of the one who formed it, I'm running out of space here. Okay. He has no understanding. So there's this in this Mark section, there's repeated use of these same terms about not understanding. In Mark 4, there's a direct quote from that Isaiah 6 text, and what he's trying to show is that basically that God is trying to do something new amongst these people, and particularly in the person of Jesus. And it seems that the people would rather just go with
the old ways.
The old way. A quote he says. The unknown way of Yahweh is to be contrasted with the known way of the idols. Basically that they have chosen the way of the idols over the way of Yahweh, and then their wisdom has become, foolishness, and and their sight has become blind, and on and on. I think it's interesting to think about this section, not only in the very literal terms of healing, but also the two healing of blindness, and then all of the teaching that goes on trying to help people understand what's happening, particularly in relation to the difficult new thing that God is doing that is hard for people to grasp, which is that the Messiah must suffer and die. Because that's the repeated thing in this phrase, from Peter's declaration through, is that this is the new thing that's happening that no one gets, and they're blind to it. But the section ends with this healing of blindness. So hopefully there's a possibility for people, that if this guy can be healed, maybe they can too. That was long and winded, but I think it's interesting to keep us thinking about how.
I guess the only challenge I see is that it's the disciples who are blind. They're the ones that they're thick-headed. It seems like the folks that Jesus encounters throughout the Gospel of Mark, the marginalized ones, they don't have no issue with it. Mm-hmm. It's the religious leaders and his own disciples that have this thick-headedness,
Right. So, yeah. No, exactly. I think, there's some other really interesting comparisons that that people make between the blind man here and some other episodes that have just happened, particularly with the disciples. And Peter makes the confession that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah. Right. This guy makes the confession that Jesus is the Son of David.
Right. Which is a higher status, according to the little research I was looking at, is even a higher status than almost in the Christ, almost in terms of Jesus' healing abilities.
Right.
So this blind man who can't see has a perception of who Jesus is that the crowd and everybody else is like. It's amazing.
Yeah. I think it's that example that keeps coming up again here too, as of that idea that the last shall be first. That there's people that have an understanding of what's going on because of their location in society.
Yeah.
That the people who think that they have it together are missing.
Right.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we transition into going up to Jerusalem, is this kind of final, blind beggar being more perceptive and seeing than many of the people who've been walking along the way.
Right.
So far.
Yeah. So far. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I think that again reminds us of something that Mark has been saying all along, right? Is that there is, it's the people on the outside that you always have to kind of be looking for and looking out to who not only are looking for healing and hope and inclusion, but also who actually have the some of the faith and resources and understanding that you are lacking.
Right, and it's almost because they're living it. They're living the struggle every day, and because they're living the struggle every day, as unlike those who live in the ivory towers, which are the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they're living the ivory tower life. These folks, the struggling folk, are living it every day, so they have to put their faith in practice every day because they're not sure where the next meal is coming from or how they're going to make it. So and so they're even more open to change and the possibility.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. Well, and I don't know, we might be able to shoehorn in one of your things that you sent about the price of food. The billionaire grocery store owner talking about the price of food rising. And I don't know if you look down in the comments, of that, because it was on a site that had people's comments all in it.
Yeah, I didn't look at the comments.
Yeah, I just happened to glance down there, because anything from Fox Business, I like to see what the comments. But it's funny because the people who that billionaire class, and then the people who want to be with them, who want to be along their side, and they, like, all the comments are about how we're going to have to cut all this spending and get people back to work and do all these things, and that way we can get that's the way to fix the economy. And it's funny because that's fine for them to say, if they're either if they are billionaires, or maybe they're grocery store owners, or maybe they're whatever. I don't know what they are, but like that flies in the face of the fact that, like, even at the best of times, this economy has not worked. Even when your people, whoever you follow, have been running the economy they want it to, it hasn't been working for the people who are the actual workers, the actual people trying to buy food, from
those
at least
struggling. There's always been perception, especially during the 4 years of the Trump administration, that what happened on Wall Street was a duplication of what happened on Main Street. That the stock market was going up 10, 15, 20%, the Main Street's doing okay. And in fact, I had posted that story on Facebook, and I made a comment that I think my comment was, this is supply side economics. And somebody made a comment that there's no such thing, supply side economics. And my comment was basically, you need to reevaluate some stuff, because Trump's whole tax cut policy was a supply side type of thing, trickle down. And what we see going on over the past 4 years of when Trump was office, it was based on supply side economics.
Right.
And I think the other article I sent you about, they said that I think 89, that only 10% of the richest people have owned 90% of the wealth of the stock market. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, 89% of the value of the stock market is held by 10%.
And to me, that's also dangerous.
Yeah,
there's some inherent dangers in that.
Well, this is this is where we're at right now with so many of these things. Like, and that's the other thing about the people in the comments of that, the thing about the grocery store thing. They're talking about how we get the economy back humming again, and it's like, for who? That's the other side of it. Like, who are you doing this for? And it becomes clearer and clearer throughout, by just looking at who's owning everything. Everything is done for their sake, And I think again, I think that's how we, I think that this story, again, even here, is we don't read in necessarily the class aspect of this story either. And we don't actually have, we we don't have a very strong class analysis of our Bible stories, in general. I think that's you know,
And that's a
that's
mistake. Yeah, that's a mistake. Yeah, that we don't invest the time to really do an analysis, really
right.
understand the social makeup of what was going on, because that helps to really enrich what's going on, our understanding of the story.
Yeah. I pulled a couple quotes out of a couple commentaries, basically from Ched Myers, who is uh, he's out in California, but he's a biblical scholar, but he does a lot of teaching and a lot of activist kind of work around
Okay.
this kind of thing, and I'll try to keep him somewhat brief, but I thought that this, this to me, this was a pretty, like, down starting right here. There's also an implied class contrast between the discipleship of Bartimeaus and the non-discipleship of the rich man, just as there was between the hemorrhaging woman and the synagogue ruler in 521. These stories exhibit several common characteristics. It's talking about how both of these, particularly both these stories, have that mention of the faith of the person.
Yeah.
And then this little part goes on, to say that the rich man could not liquidate his fortune, but poor Bartimeaus throws away his garment, his sole element of livelihood. They spread their cloaks out to receive alms. The one at the top of the social scale rejected a direct call, but the one at the bottom does not even wait for a call, springing
Right.
up and following Jesus on the way. And then he says down here, the significance of the social, economic, and political fabric of the Bartimeaus story being placed on the eve of the Jerusalem campaign should be clear. The poor join in the final assault on the dominant ideological order, and the rich have walked downcast away. The first become last, and the last first. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that analysis is right on. That the struggling folk, they don't have anything. So, and what they have, that Bartimeaus just, okay, here, that he's not tethered to material possessions. He's not tethered to the thought processes of the day. Because I mean, every day for him is a blessing. Every day is because every day is a struggle for him.
Right. Yeah. And I think that that if the call is to risk everything, even in the face of potential death, that's his day to day.
Yeah, that's his every day. That's his every day. Yeah, that's his every day.
He that call, even though we're not clear how much he understands that part of it, but I mean that that call, there's a potential for him to hear it and to not hesitate, and that's what the story kind of lays bare in that way. Is that especially compared with the rich young ruler that that just, I mean, if we look at the that was just that was just up here. It was that was just 17 through 31. And so that comes right on the heels. This story comes right on the heels of that story. That story, and it's certainly
just a tremendous comparison. I mean, just day and night.
Yeah. And then I think this next quote from a different book, but same author, goes into also comparing not only Bartimeaus and the rich man, but also the story that comes right after the rich man's, of James and John. So it brings the disciples in on the story too, which is always fun to. I mean, this one's kind of long, but this. I'll see if I can shorten it down a little bit. But unlike the rich man, Bartimeaus is landless and disabled. He's a victim of the system, not its beneficiary. Unlike the disciples, he dares not approach Jesus directly with his request. He inquires not after the mysteries of eternal life or the top posts in the new administration, but after mercy, despite those who would silence him. While the rich man walked away from the call to discipleship, Bartimeaus gives up what little he has. The cloak he casts off represents a tool of his panhandler's trade. We just heard that. But and Mark intentionally parallels his petition with that of the disciples. So the disciples, Jesus says to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" And they answered, "Grant us to sit on your right and left hand in glory." And then he says to them again, "What do you want me to do for you, Master, that I might see again?" Jesus can answer the rich man's question because he will not make reparation. The rich man, that is. Jesus cannot grant the disciples' request because it's based on delusions of grandiosity. But Jesus can help the beggar because Bartimeaus knows he is blind. And then, that's the main, that's the main section of that. And I'll just leave that up there we'll come back to that part of it. But I just thought that, to me, that's just so succinct and so clear what Mark is trying to do, in that text, in that little 2 paragraphs there. And it's so clever, it's just so clever on Mark's part, as a writer,
In terms of hermeneutics, application, where do you think we go with this? What's some of your thoughts?
Well, I was thinking about it because I was thinking about how, that Isaiah text that I ended up using on Sunday, I paired it with 1 Corinthians, talking about, the message of the cross is foolishness to a certain kind of wisdom, but for those who understand what Jesus is doing and what Christ is doing in the world, it is the message of salvation, and that whole kind of foolishness to the Greeks, a scandal to the Jews, that sort of thing, comparing the wisdoms. And I think again, this is kind of the message here in Mark, is what you have to be willing to do is ask for clearer sight about what God is doing in the world. You have to you have to be willing to see all of the pain and struggle and misery of the world, and be able to go there and actually take it in and understand that God is working there. That's going to get you to a place of seeing, and a place of healing, a place of understanding that there is hope for what God is doing, even in those places. That to me is kind of where I see, why it's the blind beggar, that is the one who shows us this example, and his request that I might see, is emphasized over, let us sit at your right hand and left, or let me have eternal life. Those are the other options. Give me a place of power. Give me the promise of eternal life. No, just let me see. Let me truly see what's going on in the world. No matter how hard it is to look at, no matter how how far away we are from what God intends. Let me see. That would be the start that we need.
Let me see is not only the physical seeing, but let me be open to possibility. Let me not be so closed-minded that I'm boxed in to one particular perspective.
Right.
Which is a challenge of today's culture, because we're so tribalized. And we can't be open to see that, that somebody else might have another possibility that might be enlightening to my situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot there. I mean, I think that there's a lot that because most of us probably, most of us are somewhere in between the rich young ruler, not ready, ready to turn away and just, and then, or like what they were saying about Isaiah, we have our idols, in their way, their wisdom is so much safer for us, it's so much easier for us to fall into. Well, like with the article you sent, the wisdom of the market working the right way, we're much happier just following that.
And I think when we look at the rich young ruler and Bartimeaus, I mean, in terms just being practical in terms of some of the issues that we face with issues of climate change, unless we're willing to give up and acknowledge the fact that we may have to give up some of our comfort.
Right.
Unless we're willing to do that, there's not going to be any change. I mean, Bartimeaus threw away his cloak. The one thing, this prized possession, the one thing he had left in the world. He's willing to do that for change.
Right.
And unless we're willing to do that, there's not going to be any change.
Well, you think about. I mean, I was thinking about this in regards to climate change. Think about that. All those indigenous activists who were in D.C., that got arrested. The thing about it is that so many of our indigenous brothers and sisters have been on the front line of these things, even though they, what's their share of the market, or what's their share of the possessions, and you know what I mean? They see what's happening and what's coming and and the threat that it is, they're willing to look at it in the face, and they're willing to stand up and say, whatever comes of this, we know that we must stand against this. And there's people like that, I mean, it's not just, you don't valorize just one community or whatever, but I think it's interesting in light of this story how so often it's the very people who are, who have been put on the outside of the decision-making system, who are actually fighting for, what we need the most, our system is not, well, like we were talking about earlier. I mean, if it's set up that I have, $1 trillion, and you have a couple thousand, like who's going to be listened to?
And that's what one of the most also significant about this text is that when Jesus leaves, Bartimeaus goes with him. He doesn't call, he calls, so the least is the one that goes with him, which is just a good signal of that this thing is about dealing with the marginalized.
Right. Well, and I think it's kind of a warning, I think, as well, to say, yes, there is a promise that God is present with us, wherever we go, and blah 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 blah. But if you're really looking for, Jesus promises to be present in some very specific places, and it is among people who are, poor and hungry and thirsty. That Jesus says that when you are there with those people, I'm there with you. You're with me in those situations. And I think that we have to get to a place that we're looking for where Jesus is in those spaces,
in those places and in those people. We got to be able to see Jesus in the Bartimeaus of the world, in the drug addicts of the world, in the in the whatever of the world. Those folks who are just
Right.
utterly broken. And I think that's the challenge that we don't. I think sometimes we don't see that there's a possibility the divine can be in the broken.
Right.
You
Yeah.
just don't see that.
Well, I mean, I think about it. I think about it a lot about, about how if Jesus returned the same way that he came the first time, we might never know, like where we're at in society.
Yeah.
We might never know,
Yeah.
we wouldn't even be, I mean that, we would just be too far out of the places where Jesus would be to even recognize that something had happened.
This is a simple analogy, but you remember when one of the Raiders of the Lost Ark when I can't remember which one it was when they were trying to find the chalice and the guy picked the chalice that had the jewels on it, and I think what's his name picked the chalice, the most messed up one because that was a carpenter. I mean, it's a similar analogy.
Right. Yeah. No. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was thinking about this. We've been dealing with, we've been talking about some of the history of the church I'm at now, and there's this story that I talked about, not Sunday, but the Sunday before, about this formerly enslaved person who had escaped from St. Louis and came up to Racine, and he lived in the town for a while, but then the guy from his master from St. Louis came up and they devised a plot to catch him, but then a bunch of people from town went up and broke him out and snuck him away and got him up to Canada, and I was talking about how where's that kind of attitude, where's that kind of attitude in our lives today? And I think, and they've set up a fund here in the city here that's named after that escaped former enslaved person. Joshua Glover is his name, and it's like a cash bail fund, to get people, to pay people's cash bail.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a big there's kind of a little bit of controversy going back and forth, around it, because some people think, well, why would you let, these criminals back on the street, and something well, anybody who has the money can get back on the street, you're not going around finding the rich white guy who molested somebody and making sure they stay in jail, because they got the money, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm saying all that because I think when you start hearing some of the stories about, some guy who gets, I don't know, you get pulled over for driving without a license, you end up in jail for a week because you can't pay $500.
Can't pay, right.
You know what I mean? And then and right now that, it gets, maybe you just missed the week that your rent was going to be late, and you can't make that, you can't make the payment. I mean, all this stuff happens just because you can't afford to get out. And not only that, but you got in trouble in the first place for something stupid, I mean, the idea that people are still in jail for simple possession of marijuana or I mean, that people might spend a week or two in jail for possession.
I think that's the whole upgrade about the whole George Floyd. It was over maybe a $20 fake bill, maybe.
Right.
I mean,
and it's so clear. It's so clear that all this stuff just has to do with poverty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not anyway, I don't want to go on my soapbox here.
That's all right.
Right before I was going to preach Sunday, the paper came out Saturday with this, one of those big, drug bust stories, how the cops had been in this 8-month, investigation, and they caught this this gang or whatever, I mean, like that whole thing. But it's like, then they show the stuff and it's like, I mean, it's like the most piddly, it's like $1,100, like 4 or 5 guns, like marijuana, psilocybin, and like a little bit of oxycodone. I mean, like, and the police are like, well, we have, this just highlights the danger of these drug gangs, these illegal drug. It's like, really? I mean, like, maybe if we actually talk to the people that you arrested, like maybe you would, like they might offer a very interesting story about, like compared to what you're like, this narrative you're giving us on a Saturday afternoon so we can read the paper and feel safe in our homes. I mean, it's, I think that's where we have to get to that place of, okay, well, that's your narrative. Like, you're telling us this is the wisdom that you want to function by, is that, it's fine to spend God only knows how much money on an 8-month investigation, involving undercover cops and, buying, small amounts of marijuana from these, these supposedly bad, but I mean, like doing all this, not even telling us how much it costs. I'd love to know how much it costs.
Yeah, and also you're not even going after the big fish. The big fish are the poppy seed growers and the and
well, it's the people who've been in a war for 20 years in Afghanistan so that they can increase the the poppy production.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you just wait, like the numbers are going to come out in a couple of years after the Taliban takes over. Not that I support the Taliban in any way, but you're going to see that the poppy production is going to go down to like about 2% of what it is right now.
Yeah.
Because we're not there anymore.
Yeah.
Running drugs from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I mean,
I remember
that's some craziness.
Remember this old Law and Order episode where they had the rest of this guy was a Afghani general or something, and the whole plot was, well, the Afghani general was giving us information and we was allowing him to grow his poppy seed. So
right.
Yeah. So I mean, one hand watching the other.
More like we're telling him to grow his poppy. And
You do your thing. Just feed us the intel we need. So.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. Well, actually, I've seen some really. I mean, I've heard some really interesting reporting about that. I mean, and it's really not a joke. I mean, like we. I mean, actually, if you think about it, the whole oxycodone plague or whatever coincides directly with the war in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the same. It's the same time period.
Yeah.
Like where do you think all that came from?
Yeah.
And you're telling me that we can't regulate that as like the main military force over there? Well, yes, we can regulate it. We did it. We regulated it just the way that we wanted to. And this is what happened. Because we made a lot of money off of it.
It comes down to priorities. I followed was the economist Robert Reich, and he was having this debate about about what we can afford. And I think what was the guy, the governor that got caught, that ran away? The guy, I think he's the governor of South Carolina. The one that ran away one time with his to find his love of his life somewhere in that.
Right. Yeah.
But he was saying that we cannot afford these priorities, and I'm just like, wait a minute. We didn't spend how much money did we spend in Afghanistan over 20 years?
Right.
We try to tell me we can't afford Medicare for all. We can't afford universal health care. We can't afford that. I mean, it's ridiculous. Right. It's just a matter of what are our priorities.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's
I mean, Jesus in the story says that the Bartimeaus of the world should be our priorities.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that is pretty clear. That is pretty clear. Yeah. No, I think we're in an interesting place. But again, I mean, just like this story, I mean, it's who you're listening to. You are, most of us are, and I mean, in many ways, I'm still blind to so many things because it's intentional that everything I see, read, hear is provided by the people who can pay to have it given to me.
Yeah.
They're the ones, and they're the ones, that I know what I was going to say when you were talking about that too, is that, something else someone was saying is that, and this package is what? It's over 10 years. It's not like next year, all that money's going to be spent that they're talking about.
Yeah.
It's
right.
like over 10 years.
Yeah.
And so, and they were talking about the funding for the HBCUs and the other, what do they call them? Minority interest. They're combined together.
Yeah.
And whatever amount of money they're promising, it like ends up to be like, like $200,000 a year or something like that. That's really not, that's not
a lot of money.
Not doing much,
Yeah.
for school.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but no, that's good. Yeah. So, let me see if I can throw up these. There's some questions that came at the end of this book that I thought were like they're kind of like those questions for reflection kind of thing about. So it says, do we ask why? Are we critical of our sources of information? Do we demand clear pictures, honest images, truth? Through what lens do we look at the reality around us? Do we question the bias of our own line of vision? Are we willing to open our minds and hearts to the implications of what we see? What does the world look like from the perspective of the poor and those on the margins? How can we locate ourselves in order to find out? Jesus gives sight beyond seeing. How often have we reflected upon the gifts of the Spirit, especially wisdom, understanding, and knowledge? Have we the courage to accept these gifts that give us frightening yet healing insights about the way the world works? We pray, Jesus, let us see again. Let us see through your eyes of love so that we might follow you on the way.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's worth thinking about for a little while.
Because like I said, it requires an open heart, open mind, open to different possibilities. And just like I said earlier, we're just so locked in, so tribalized that we're just not open to seeing. And that's why I said before, one of the things that photography has taught me is be open to possibility.
Right.
Now I'll take a picture and I'll rework that image over 3 or 4 or 5 different times. Same picture, but it might look 4 or 5 different ways. So I'm trying to be open to possibility. And I think that's what Jesus is calling us to do, be open to possibility.
Yeah.
That means you got to throw away some of the filters that folks say we need to be looking through.
Right. Yeah.
And questioning those filters.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, good. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope that Marcy and her friend are all okay, and I hope,
I hope so too. I'm texting them. Check on her.
Yeah. So, anyway, this is good. Good
stuff. Did you say you were preaching on this Sunday?
I'm not preaching on this Sunday. I don't know when I don't know if I'll get back to Mark. I don't even know if I'll get back to Mark before Mark is over with.
Okay.
I know that by Advent I'll be in Luke. So
I forgot. It's almost time for the Advent text now.
Yeah. So
4 weeks.
I wonder what the I'm going to try to find out what I forgot to look at what's next week. It's crazy how far along we are here.
It's almost in the Bible already. Wow.
So next week is Mark 12, 28 through 34. And I don't even know what that is for sure. I'll admit, I'll admit that. Let's see here. I might be able to get it real quick. 38. What did I say?
28.
Did I say 20? 28.
That's the pericope of the, what's the
Yeah,
greatest
20.
commandment?
Yes, yes. Yeah, the greatest commandment. Yeah. All right. Well, that should be interesting.
That should be interesting. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Yeah. And I think my plan is I think yeah, 38, 28 through 34. And that would be yeah. And then I think one of those weeks I'm going to have to well, I'm going to have to skip. I'm going to skip one of those weeks because I have a I'm supposed to do a I'm supposed to I have an event one of those Monday nights, and so
Okay.
I'm going to have to skip. But maybe we can maybe we can get with Marcy and figure out a day that she has available. We can do a pre-recorded and throw it up on Monday night. Maybe might
Okay.
might work.
That would be a weekend for me to do something like that. But
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. We might see how
Okay.
we have a quick conversation about something.
Okay.
I don't want to miss out on if we have any apocalyptic texts coming up. I don't know. We must be getting close to, Mark 13 somewhere where we start, getting getting the moon turning to blood and stuff like that.
Yeah. Real fiery stuff. Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, have a good night.
Have a good week, Darren, and
Yeah, you too. For sure.
We'll be talking.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
I'll talk to you.